Hello, my name is Shannon, your round-the-clock anime Misfit anchor, and on tonight's top story of the Wacky Rice Bowl news, we have a tale about bravery, honor, and things going to the dogs. Who am I kidding? I was bored, but ladies and gentlemen Misfits, get ready to be socked in the mouth, metaphorically, as we review the anime fresh off the streets in Megalo Box. So, roll it! See, that's how you do an intro, people. Come on, we gotta get snappy. Chop chop. I'll be upfront, as I have a lot of things I like about this show that I would want to go over in full detail. So before we just dive into fangirl mode, I'm going to get a few cons out of the way first. One of them I can think of is mainly a personal preference, honestly, in that this is one of those types of shows I have to binge or I will end up not really watching it. For me, this is the type of roller coaster series that I don't like waiting between weeks just to get my fix. It's so entertaining and that much emotionally investing that it's go big or go home, which is why I had to initially stop watching it last season and wait till it was fully done so I could enjoy it and criticize it as fairly as possible. My second complaint with the show, and more of a actual show problem, is that some of the beginning bits could have been streamlined for me in order to get to the matches much faster. While I wouldn't say to completely gut the first few episodes, as it still came off well-paced and directed, I just felt like Megalo Box shined the most once it got to the sanctioned matches. It hooked me and never let me go. Now, the concept of building up your story through that type of narrative is important. Again, there's only so much you can do in 13 episodes, so trying to squeeze everything you want in can be a balancing act. With that said, I do think one of the conflicts involving the Shirato siblings felt out of place in the boxing narrative. Or should the better phrase be too squeezed in for those 13 episodes like I said before. Just like the beginning, it's another one of those things that should have been streamlined. In concept, I did like the emotional investment and motivations of these siblings, but it felt like they were just pushing the narrative in a more complex manner than it should have been. As for my final con, this one is going to sound crazy, but I didn't watch Megalo Box for the boxing. I know, crazy, right? Yes, I did know this was a sports anime. No, I didn't watch the original incarnation of this show that it derives from, but what I mean to say is that I was more invested in the interactions of these characters, lessons, and dramatic tension than the actual matches itself. Now, the matches here were really pretty to watch, but let's be honest with ourselves, we knew the match outcomes already. It doesn't take very long for the actualization to kick that in. So to say that objectively it's a really predictable show is not off the mark, but I think the show kinda knows that. On the bright side, it doesn't take away from the fact that the show is still worth watching. For now, the cons are now off and that's all we can think of, so fangirl mode is now turned on. Give me a moment. Holy cow, this show's so good! Where to start? I guess we should first address the themes of this show. I loved how riveting the show explores the lessons of living in the moment and risking it all. To do things your way, even if others might disagree. Every major character, fighter or not, by the end of the series shows what it really means to live to make it, instead of making it to live. So this may be a frowned upon opinion, but I will defend the ending as a nice poetic send-off that showcased that point. No matter what you said about its anticlimactic nature, or the fact that people really wanted to see something unique, like the show was telling us all along, this is a wild journey for these characters, and this is the choices they made. This is the ending they chose with no regrets. Is the ending flashy and new? No, but does that reflect the humble beginnings of a man who just wanted to show the world what he's made of? I would say so. As per the characters in detail, it's no contest in saying this is where Megalo Box really sells it. This was a very emotionally investing show where it's not about who wins or loses, but how these matches affects everyone's lives. As I said before, every character, even the so-called bad ones, do have something to round them out. It makes them have a reason to do what they do. Their character transforms over time. This is of course reflected most in JD/Joe and his ragtag cohorts of Team Nowhere. In the beginning, all JD wanted was a chance to add a real fight. A chance to grasp a future by his own hand without feeling pulled down by his cold, impoverished-stricken fate. Being an illegal alien and someone a certain some president would rather have pushed out faster than you can say MS-13, his dreams of wanting to go far seemed to stop him at the door. That wasn't until a risky proposition ironically got him the launchpad needed to give his chance and finally be able to fight for real. And this is the part of the show where I was first worried. 4, because I was hoping I wouldn't see someone literally fight against the machine because it was the right thing to do, or because it was unnatural. No! In actuality, he became Gearless Joe because A, they were too poor to afford an actual good gear, and B, as his coach Nambu said, this was their best chance in rising the ranks quickly with burning notoriety, with the caveat of setting that risk in all atmosphere that Joe and we, the audience, came here for. JD himself is your typical grub average. Oh, I just got it now. Man, I'm slow. But this is the perfect cover to showcase his worth not only to the audience, but to his final boss and foil, Yuri. It took me to episode 10 and a lot of rewatching of the opening to realize how similar these characters really are. Both are essentially dogs raised to protect the aspirations of their masters, chained down from a dream just out of reach, then coming to a point in life where they will risk tooth and nail to break their chains and have their moment in the setting sun. Yuri's story always had an air of mystery, as we are not shown the exact details of his full story, but we know the important details, and that's all that really matters, as he also realized the true worth of a real fight. As for other characters of note, there's just too many of them to put in one short, concise review, but I think my two favorite side characters are obviously Nambu for his scumbaggery, yet dirty road to personal redemption, and their opposing force, Miss Tournament Arc herself, Shirato. At first, I thought she was just a one-note antagonist with a enhancements are the future philosophy from start to finish, but her transformation was a nice, subtle sight to behold. I could go on, but I will move on from here because we will still have to gush over that sweet, sweet grungy art. But give me a moment while I wash a taste of emotional high and tears from my mouth. Now, it may have only been a young Misfit when the names of Trigun and Bebop ruled the anime world, though I still have an appreciation for the beauty of grunginess. Megalo Box not only has that grunginess patent down, but it elevated that art style to something timeless. One reason I say this is how it took that grungy sports look of Hajime no Ippo and Ashia no Joe, the series that this one is based off, and gave it such a hip-hop flair. Before watching the series, I only barely heard of these two other boxing anime and never had an interest in seeing them. Because, well, boxing anime is normally my thing. From an outsider's perspective, however, I can see why this show appealed to me more than the others. I think that's because this Joe is a lot dirtier than the other two, and no, I don't mean that type of dirty, that's just racist. But rather, his stakes are higher, seem higher. His situations are more desolate and bleak, or seem more desolate and bleak. See where I'm going at? To me, this show makes Joe's situations immediately more noticeable than the other two. He lives under a bridge, for Pete's sake. I refuse to believe his manga counterpart really would have a tougher time than this version of Joe. These character designs, in fact, are one pillar to this equation, as the fresh take and modern upscale puts the rest of the set pieces together. Their clothing, expressions, how they walk, and the obvious contrast in living styles makes it much more relatable in this era of entertainment. I love this and the background pieces, as it's a proper use of show not tell. The actual animation is just as clever, if not harder for me to explain than the character designs. I just want to say first, I'm not an expert, but to me, the movements of characters felt intentionally heavier compared to what I'm used to, and I really like that. It's probably a no-brainer to some who watches these types of shows often. It's just that I like seeing how each fighter was thinking of their moves through the heavy punches, or when, for example, we watched Joe's experiences of taking so many hits to take advantage over the course of the sanctioned matches, as it got more apparent that he was more confident in looking at his opponent after his battle with fear, which also makes when the scenes go into still frame all the more useful. It's a good way for them to not have to edit so much, but focus on the attention to detail and emotion of these fighters in the face. Though I guess this is where it gets hard to explain for me, since I said earlier that I didn't watch this show for the actual boxing. Yeah, I'm talking mostly about the boxing scenes right here. Sometimes your enjoyment and critical eye come at an impasse, I guess. But you know what's easy for me to gush about? That soundtrack, man! Let's quickly get past the obvious similarities to Samurai Champloo here, because come on, you probably already know that fact, you lovely viewer. Beyond that stipulation, the soundtrack is this funky portrayal of urban and almost desperado-type vibes, which is funny because during my watch of the series, I barely noticed it. For something so intense, it melded well with the background for me, as it was just enough to be memorable to talk about and push the narrative without feeling intrusive. Simply put, the music for the most part was there to highlight Megalo Box, subtly to put on my mind thoughts I wouldn't have thought otherwise, with two exceptions. The first was when we got to hear the fresh beats of that rapper kid here. Normally I'm not one for rap in anime because, again, it's just nothing I grab onto. However, this kid's sick beats, rhythm, and most importantly words were able to set up the plot for things to come. At this point, it felt like a prophecy being told by a wandering soul who we never learned the name of, and I find that poetic. These sequences were my favorite sound-wise. The second exception would have to be the opening for how the music revs up your emotions and accompanies that symbolic imagery, like the two wolves obviously symbolizing our two contrasting rivals. I do want to point out though that the music of the OP isn't something to my personal taste. I'm just saying how critically it impacts my sense of observation, and it does a good job overall. But I guess we are heading down a similar pathway of Shannen didn't care much for the ending bit. Yeah, I just can't recall it off the top of my head, and I just finished watching that series upon writing the script. I don't know, it just was so forgettable, or my attention span is so low as a dog watching a tennis ball fly by. Oh well. Congratulations, Megalo Box! You got me into liking a boxing anime! You were full of passionate characters and emotion. Every single person felt important and had purposes or motives that didn't feel too cookie-cutter. While you were still predictable, pushed maybe a little too much content in a 13-episode time limit, and has a very mixed ending among the viewers, it was your style and attention to detail that kept me coming back. So I say to you, Megalo Box, no, you didn't reinvent the wheel, but one thing's for sure, you had a damn good job polishing it. So after 3 rounds with a KO at the 2-minute mark, I award Megalo Box with a recommendation to buy it and a watchability rating of PG-13. I guess I enjoyed this series more than I thought, and I'm happy about that. My only concern now is how that enjoyment will hold up in a potential rewatch, because I feel like after seeing the initial splendor of sweaty gear boxing, the luster might dim the second time, though we will just have to see. As for other anime alternatives, I really have only 3 for you today. Since A, I'd rather not just recommend Shampoo and Bebop for the umpteenth time like everybody else, those are probably obvious choices by now, and B, I haven't watched a lot of sports anime, so let's let the first recommendation be the movie Redline, a road rage cyberpunk epic where all you need to go faster is a little more drivers and Blu-ray, cause man, this movie needs to be watched like that. Secondly will be the repeat recommendation in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Yeah, I recommend this series very recently in a past review, but the similarities of the two rivals from similar living conditions and such makes so much more sense. Just watch it. Which finally leaves the anime Pasquatch as my third pick this time around. As a disclaimer, I haven't fully watched this title and it's kind of blind, but it does have a premise and style similar to this version of Joe, just with mecha basketball instead of mecha enhanced boxing. But either way, one of these 3 might pique your interest, so go ahead and enjoy. What does our next review weather report tell us now, Shannen? Well, my conscious self, the next stop on our reviewing journey will take us to dragons who really want to feed themselves to single office ladies and a childhood favorite put through the kawaii machine. But by then, we should be getting back to our head-to-head review raffle. Also, to the person who parked their green Jaguar out back, you left your keys in the ignition and Owlbear has stolen it for a joyride. If you're out there in the internet land and have seen this bearish brute, then do not hesitate to post in the comments below. And maybe we'll do something about it. I don't know, maybe after lunch. Back to you in the studio. That ends it here, folks. If you want to know everything this wacky channel has to offer, why not give this video a like or subscribe to the Anime Misfit today? The only place to find corn on the cat and strawberry tuna fish. And hit that notification bell to find out when the next saucy anime dish is served. I don't know why I said that. Follow me on all my social media from around the web. Plus, if you really want to go beyond the call of mystical duty, consider supporting me through Patreon or Ko-fi to help me out. I highly appreciate it. That's a wrap, people! Alright, everyone out the building. We got no time to waste before we set up the next set of— oh my god, the bear has ran through the studio! Everybody run for your lives! I don't want to get flattened, so I better run! Shannen out and all that jazz!